What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of New York Got Game. Hopefully you had yourselves a wonderful Christmas, wonderful Hanukkah, happy holidays to everyone, but it is about to be another new year. We are approaching the start of 2026, and the Knicks, they find themselves back in the middle of expectations, questions, and pressure. Some things with the Knicks feel pretty familiar. We've got the grittiness, we've got the resiliency that we've seen late in games. Jalen Brunson coming up in the clutch, but then some other things feel really different. So this week on New York Got Game, we're going to ask the question that Knicks fans definitely always ask at this time late in the year and heading into the new year, which is, as the calendar turns, will this really be a new year, new Knickerbocker team? That is the question. Are we going to see that? We're going to look at what's real, right? What still needs fixing with this Knicks team, and what does this team have to become in 2026 if they're going to be just more than another same chapter in the story of the New York Knicks? And obviously, people want to see the story finish with them winning a championship. So we're going to look into all of that on this episode. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, so we're going to get into it and look at what is going to be up with the Knicks for the new year. And to do that, I've got my guy joining me, perfect person to talk with this about. He is the founder of Knicks Fan TV, also host there. You see him on many different places, host of the NBA Report as well, doing a fantastic job there. It's my guy, CP, the Fanchise. CP, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Dex, always a pleasure to be on with you, man. Happy Sunday.
Yeah, man. Happy to you. Great to start a new week. Hopefully you had a great holiday, great Christmas. We're going to talk about the
Yep.
new year and all this stuff for the Knicks, and hopefully a blessed new year to you as well. But CP, let's start with this. I want to do a little bit of I'll call it a resolution check for the Knicks. We're going to diagnose, what changes must be made, what maybe needs some time with this team, which, sometimes people don't have patience. But when you strip away the emotions and you look at everything here with the Knicks, what's the single biggest thing that you think this team needs to resolve if they're serious about contending in 2026?
Well, I think you're seeing a lot of positive signs across the board with this roster, from the unsung contributors, right? The Koleks, Kevin McCullers is stepping up now, to the offense, how it's clicking, seemingly clicking on all cylinders on their brand new system, and a rotation that has been in flux with guys being in and out due to injury. And so to see where they are right now, their overall standing, and then offensively, they look like a great team with a long way to go. So that's a very positive sign. Now, as it relates to what they need to work on, it's no question it's their defense. They need to reach that level of being able to play championship caliber defense. And it doesn't need to be top three elite, but they do need to find those right combinations, the right rotations to ensure that they are also getting timely stops. One of the things that's been a carryover from the Tom Thibodeau era and been even worse this year is their three-point defense. From the amount of attempts that they give up, especially from the corners, to their opponents' three-point efficiency. And so it's not clear whether or not it's a schematic issue. Do they need to close out harder? Is it a personnel issue? Why this has kind of been a recurring theme, even when Tom Thibodeau was coach of this team. Something to look at, but very interesting given the fact that they do have two very talented wings in Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. So the three-point defense is one part of the defense that needs to improve. Their turnover percentage, even though they have those guys who are very excellent players in terms of ranking those stocks, the steals and the blocks, I think as a team, it would help if you had more ball hawks defensively. And I think that will improve once they get guys like Miles McBride, Landry Shamet back. And as a result of the other guys in the deeper end of the roster that have been playing and contributing well, I think it'll allow those guys to put more pressure on the ball and take more risks as it relates to trying to turn teams over. But overall, I think that will certainly help the defense.
So I love that you talked about defense there. Some people I think that criticize this are going to look at this and say, well, can the Knicks be that good of a defensive team when your best offensive players, Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, are not known as good defenders? CP, I've been saying all along, I think this team needs to get into the top 8 to 10 in terms of defensive rating. I think they can get there. Do you think they can get there? Do they have the personnel to be that good defensively?
Well, they have no choice. They have to if they want to win a championship. Now,
Right.
do they have the personnel? I think if that'll be determined once we see this squad really at full strength. We have not really seen that for a large sample yet this season. And then also what they do at the trade deadline. Will they be able to get lucky, pull a rabbit out of the hat by using the Abasele contract to get more wing depth or more front court depth? I think that ultimately determine just how good this defense can be. But as I mentioned with the three-point defense, that needs to be improved. The turnover percentage can be improved a little bit. They're about middle of the pack. They're about average, but that can be improved just based on some of the other personnel that they have. But their transition defense, Dex, that has also gotten worse, carried over from the Tom Thibodeau era. They are giving up way more damage in transition than they were last year. And I think part of that is them not matching up personnel in transition. Their shot selection at times, for example, like when a Karl-Anthony Towns hits the deck, or you have a guy taking a uncharacteristically bad shot, it puts their defense automatically in a scramble. Even on makes, Dex, they are giving up points in transition. So that has got to be cut down no matter who's out there on the floor. But that's certainly a concern because, like I said, even on makes, when they're giving up points in transition, that's not a good sign for your defense. I think if they shore up those three things, they can crack that top 10.
All right. Got to shore up those things if they're going to crack the top 10. I would agree with you 100% here. Defense has to be better. That's got to change in the new year. We'll see if that happens in 2026. Okay, so moving on, I want to do a little different bit thing in this segment here, and I'm going to call it Keep It or Leave It in 2025. So, CP, when you look at this, could you share with me one thing you think the team should keep that worked well from them this year in 2025 as we approach the new year, and one thing they absolutely need to leave behind? It could be a thing, it could be something they do, it could be a player. What do you need to leave behind in 2025, not bring it to 2026, and what do you need to keep from 2025?
Well, one thing easily that they need to keep is Tyler Kolek's rotation minutes. Even though he's come in with guys primarily being hurt, like he got started to get his opportunity starting the season with Josh Hart was out, and then once Landry Shaman and Deuce McBride started missing games from the November 22nd game in Orlando, Tyler Kolek has really seized his opportunity. But in those minutes, you're seeing the Knicks offense be a bit more versatile by adding another playmaker alongside Jalen Brunson. That's helped. His three-point aggressiveness, or overall just aggressiveness in terms of being a scoring threat, has taken his game to new heights. But also, Dex, his defense has been commendable. I mean, let's look no further than Saturday night's win against the Atlanta Hawks. Who was in there in offense, substitutions, but Tyler Kolek in replacement of Jalen Brunson? I couldn't believe what I saw.
I couldn't believe it either.
That just shows you the development, the maturity in his game, the trust that Mike Brown has in his game when he's out there as another playmaker, his ability to find guys, throw guys open from Mikal Bridges. The chemistry Mikal Bridges is great. We saw a thread the needle pick and roll situation with Karl-Anthony Towns. I'm sure you can do the same with Mitchell Robinson and get those guys some easier looks. So Tyler Kolek's rotation minutes absolutely have to stay.
All right, so Tyler Kolek's rotation minutes absolutely have to stay. I think a lot of people agree with that. And then there's a whole thing you can get into in the fact of, do the Knicks even need to look in the trade market for a backup point guard, because Tyler Kolek right now is looking like that backup point guard. What has to go from 2025 and not come into 2026, CP? What do you have there?
Well, unfortunately for their taxpayer mid-level acquisition, their prize acquisition over the summer, Karl-Anthony Towns just has not been working out for this team. As you see, he's been logging DMPs now, so you can see he's made his way out of this rotation. From whether or not you want to say he's in shape or not, I'll leave that to the nutritionist. But overall, his defense has lapsed, and offensively, he's just not an efficient player in the limited minutes that he's getting. And so that's why you see him on the outside looking in. As I said at the top of the show, if Leon Rose can strike lightning in a bottle and find someone to take on that contract, do they have to put a second-round pick on top of that? Potentially. But if they're able to swap a disgruntled player for a disgruntled player, and maybe that change of scenery helps their new acquisition. Is it a wing player? Is it another backup center? I think that'll help the Knicks as they look forward to the second half of the season and beyond.
I had a feeling you might say Gershon Yabusele. He's been, yeah, as you mentioned, out of the rotation. A lot of Knicks fans already have him traded. They want to pack his bags and get him up out of here. It just hasn't been a good fit. That's no shade to him. As you said, it just hasn't been a good fit at all. Do you have a preference of if you could move him and you had to attach a second round pick or maybe two to him in order to move him? Do you have a preference in the kind of player you'd want to come back for Gershon Yabusele that can help this Knicks team?
Wing depth is where I'm leaning on
Okay.
now. As you see with Josh Hart out with the ankle injury, you never know what can happen with OG Anunoby. And the Knicks have been very fortunate that Mikal Bridges is able to maintain his Iron Man streak. But just someone who can come in and guard twos, threes, maybe even some fours and spell wing stop. They're doing a great job. And hey, maybe it's already improvement from within with how Muhammad Diawara has been playing as of late. That's certainly an option, but you can never, to me, just like they say, you can never have enough pitching in baseball. You can never have enough wing depth to me in basketball, especially in this apron era where your depth is going to be valued and important as you continue through the playoffs. So finding that guy, not going to be easy because a lot of teams value that archetype, but I
Right.
think that's a position where the Knicks can look to add to bolster their bench.
All right, wing depth. Tyler Kolek's minutes, keep that going into 2026. Gershon Yabusele's minutes, or I should say lack of minutes, get that out of here going into 2026. All right, moving on. I want you to give me, if you can, CP, one word for the Knicks in 2026. If you had to define the Knicks' path going forward in the new year in one word, what would that be and why?
I'd say East, meaning take the East and win
Hmm.
the East, because there's no bigger opportunity than now for this team. The way that they are loaded from top to bottom, as it seems right now, their stars are playing. Jalen Brunson playing at an even better. This is probably his best season as an Knick, and that's saying a lot because he's been fantastic for this team since he's gotten here. So tremendous what Jalen Brunson is doing, and that's almost a sub story to everything else that has been good for the Knicks. But there's no bigger time than now. And it's not to overlook any of the other teams that are in the East, the Clevelands, the Detroits. Hey, give credit to the Boston Celtics. Jaylen Brown is leading that team, putting that team on his back
Yep.
without Jason Tatum and the rest of the supporting cast from last year that made that team so strong. But to me, I don't see a team that can consistently be an issue for the Knicks come playoff time. I think the Knicks have what it takes to win the East, to take the East, and going forward. That is my definition of success as I look at this second half, taking the East and representing the East in the NBA Finals.
All right, CP's one word here is East. Take the East. Should get to the NBA Finals. I would happen to agree with that, with you on that. I think the Knicks are in a great position to do that. Now, look, you got to stay healthy. You got to have a little bit of luck on some of those things around the way. Hopefully, that's the thing. Can you stay healthy through 3 rounds to get to the NBA Finals and play the best basketball that you can? It's a great opportunity. It's one I think a lot of Knicks fans out there don't want to see them blow. So we'll see if they can do it. Right now, they're playing very good basketball at the time of us recording this with 2 more games left in 2025. All right, for the next segment, I want to talk about pressure. Because when you talk about what you just said, CP, and you talk about the word East as your one word that'll define them going forward, and the expectations that were coming into this year. And now you got to think those expectations have only grown with the way the Knicks have played, coming off of the NBA Cup championship and all of that stuff. They're off to this good start. We're getting near close already to the halfway point of the season. So as we head deeper into the season, CP, who on or around this Knicks team do you think feels the most pressure? And why would you say it is? Who's feeling the most pressure around the Knicks right now?
I think it's Karl-Anthony Towns.
Hmm.
For one, coming into the season when he made the comment about not understanding his role in the Mike Brown system. And, there was debate about how serious was he? Was he just being tongue in cheek? And then there was an admittance from Mike Brown that, yes, he is having a challenge. He is playing the toughest role in this offense and in this system. And for Karl-Anthony Towns, whether you want to call him a 1A to 1B to Jalen Brunson, he has to deliver for this team to win the championship. Yes, we can talk about how good he is at using his gravity to make this team better, at playmaking for his team, at, causing the defense to shift. All of those are great things. But in crunch time and money time, you can rely on Jalen Brunson to put the team in the best position to win. But the question is, will Karl-Anthony Towns be there to deliver in those big spots? We can point to the success that he had in Detroit. We can point to the success that he had winning that game in Game 3 against Indiana when the Knicks were looking down the barrel of a potential sweep. He had delivered in those moments, but you want to see that he can do that consistently. They're going to need both Brunson and Towns to achieve this, and a lot of it, to me, Dex, is going to rely on his decision-making and his outlook. We saw a fantastic approach from Karl-Anthony Towns in their win over the Hawks. He saw where this Hawks team had no rim protection, had no paint presence, and every single guy they threw at him, he was a monster. 18 free throw attempts. That is what you want to see from Karl-Anthony Towns. And yes, the three-point efficiency has gone up and it has improved. But then on the other side, you see a guy who leads the league in offensive fouls. So
see, that's the thing. Yeah, that's
right.
That's what I was hoping you got to, CP. Yeah.
Those are turnovers. Those are turnovers.
Right.
And so he's got to work on that. Better decisions with the ball, I think, is going to ultimately determine how far this Knicks team can go, and that's with Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I think when people say, okay, they hear him say you have the most pressure, he has the most pressure in Karl-Anthony Towns, they'll think about, okay, I want to see big games from Towns. I want to see offensive games like we saw against Atlanta on Saturday night. But for me, when I look at it, it's that last part of what you said. It's not picking up the stupid fouls. It's not having the offensive fouls. You know, my colleague Stephen Bondi just wrote a great article about Towns being aware of this. And I've been in the locker room. I've heard Towns say this. I need to cut down these stupid fouls. Mike Brown has said it. That, to me, is going to be the biggest sign of maturity for him. It's the being able to stay on the floor. It's one part is what you said. I agree. When you have a team like Atlanta and you got smaller guys on you, you have to be able to take advantage of that. Now, did he do a great job on the defensive end in that game against Okongwu? No, he gave him too much space, gave up a lot of threes. I thought that was suspect too, but he's got to stay on the floor, CP, and be available for the Knicks in playoff time. And how much of that for you, just so you can expound on this a little bit, how much of that for you is, him showing up on the defensive end? And I do want to give Cat some credit, because he has shown that he can hold up, and it's been okay on the defensive end, especially during that NBA Cup run. But it's not always consistent, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, he has those lapses, but I just feel like when they get to, that first round, second round, and beyond, and when the stakes, present themselves as they're right there, they need 16 dubs to get it done. I think he will. When it's all said and done, I think he will lock in. Now, to defend those floor spacing bigs, whether it was a Porzingis last year during the regular season or now Okongwu, who's really improved in that regard, give him a lot of credit. Will they see that type in the playoffs? You think about a Cleveland. Hey, maybe it's in Orlando with a Wendell Carter Jr. or Paolo Banchero. So they're there. They are there. They will be there with some of the guys that the Knicks are going to have to contend with. So that's on Mike Brown and that's on Karl-Anthony Towns to make sure that when he is out there, if they're not going to play the double big, that he can hold it down. And rim protection-wise, at the rim, he's been fine. But on the perimeter is where it can get dicey because he does not have the foot speed. He doesn't turn his hips as well. And also, whether he's in the drops or not, he's kind of in that in-between in terms of, should I be back a little bit to make sure that this guy doesn't get past me, or do I need to step out and close out better on the three-point opportunities? It's tough position for him defensively.
It is a tough position for him defensively. I do think he looks better knowing that he's not sitting in drop coverage the way he had to under Tibbs. He looks a little bit more comfortable, but like you said, it's still a work in progress for Cat. Okay, so Karl-Anthony Towns is your player, a person around the Knicks who has the most pressure heading into the new year of 2026. Last thing for me here, CP, let's close we'll look ahead a little bit, right? Let's go to the end of the season. Let's say by the end of the season, what has to be true for all of us, media, content creator, fans out there, to say, yeah, this year, 2026, was really a new year for the Knicks? Because look, CP, you've been watching Knicks for a long time. I've been watching Knicks for a long time, and you'll hear it from people, man, it's the same old Knicks. Now, I don't think they should get the same old Jets treatment like the Jets, because the Jets are the Jets, but you'll hear this sometimes about the Knicks. So I think that with all the pressure that we're talking about, with everything that's riding on this season, what's got to be true for you to say, okay, new year, new Knicks, 2026 is different?
Winning the East, and in a way that, obviously, as you get further in the process of the playoffs is going to get harder. It should get harder. It is the playoffs.
Right.
But last year, you look at the Detroit series, for example, that was a struggle. And
Mm.
I think that had give credit to Detroit. They're a tough physical team. They're a good defensive team. And it was known going into that series that it was going to be a grind. But just to see the Knicks searching and the way that they were searching for offense, I think it took a toll on them. And then they went into Boston and another toll. So I thought by the time they got to Indiana, they were a bit of a worn down team. And then they had to literally run the Indy 500 against that team. So I thought that was tough. But for the Knicks, winning the East, but in convincing fashion from the first round into the second round, that would be led by their two stars in Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, but also on how Mike Brown manages that depth. Those deeper end rotation players, the Koliks, the Diawaras, the McCullers, will they have an opportunity to assert themselves in these games and help this team in those marginal minutes? I think it's going to take a full squad effort here to get it done, and that is where you're truly going to evaluate Mike Brown. Everything is great now. The honeymoon period is fantastic. It's all roses and rainbows right now. But if they don't get there, to me, when that's what he was brought here for, and they finished 2 games shy of that mark, and as I mentioned, the East is theirs for the taking, to me, it would be a colossal disappointment if they don't reach the NBA Finals.
So you brought up something there. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. You talked about just looking at last year and, how worn out the team looked by the time they got to the conference finals against the Pacers. And I agree with you about the honeymoon phase of Mike Brown, although I'm a big fan of how he's been managing this team right now. I love it. I love him giving the opportunities to younger players. This is no shade to Tibbs. But where are you on the way Mike Brown is managing the team? And you kind of alluded to it just there in your answer. Do you really believe that'll pay dividends for this team down the road when it matters, as you just said, in the playoffs? This is when Mike Brown's going to be judged. The way he's managing the team, now playing a little bit deeper, possibly being able to go 10, 11 deep in the playoffs, possibly. Do you think that'll benefit this Knick team in being able to take advantage of what you said, and they need to get to the finals? Do you think that'll help them?
Of course, yeah, for sure, for sure. And especially like when I look at a guy like a Kolik, I look at his season right now and the opportunities that he's getting as I want to see how he's able to handle better teams and pressure cooker situations. Christmas Day was a prime example. You had the Cavs, who right now are struggling but improving. Last year they were number 1 in the East. Christmas Day national TV game, you're down by 18 points. And I thought he passed that test tremendously. He went up against the Timberwolves. He got to start against the Timberwolves, going up against Mike Conley and Dante DiVincenzo. A little bit more of a struggle, but I think that's all part of the learning process that could ultimately help these guys come through for this team once they get to the postseason, because they will have established chemistry with their guys, understand what the coach needs from them, and then you hope that they're able to translate that in meaningful minutes. So for Brown, I think there's a positive to all the injuries. The injuries have been unfortunate, but the positive from this is that it's forced him to get a longer look at a Tyler Kolek, a Muhammad Diawara, a Kevin McCullough Jr., at times Ariel Huckporty when Mitchell Robinson doesn't play on the second night of back-to-backs, or if the Knick Bigs are in foul trouble. So I think all of these minutes and all of these moments for these young guys and for Mike Brown will pay dividends for this team when it really matters, and that's in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's one of the biggest things we have to watch in 2026. I really do. How this team is managed. We've seen what Mike Brown's done early on, but CP, how they do it, how he does it down the stretch of the season is going to be very interesting. And watching who grows or who doesn't grow over these next couple of months before they get to the playoffs, it's going to be huge to see. So we'll see how it is. 2026 right around the corner. CP, I know you had a good holiday. Thank you for rocking here with me on this episode of New York Got Game. I want to wish you, your family, Happy New Year. Much blessings to the KFTV crew in 2026. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Likewise, man. Anytime, Dex. Thanks again for having me.
Anytime. Okay, so final episode of 2025. We're going to put a bow on the 2025 portion of this next season and look ahead to 2026 as we did on this episode. Special thanks to my guest, CP the Fanchise of Knicks Fan TV. But I want to talk a little bit more about what I think is the biggest revelation of 2025 and all the changes the Knicks made as they go into 2026. And I talked about it a little bit with CP at the end of our conversation, and that is Mike Brown and how he is managing this Knicks rotation. Now, look, the change to bring Mike Brown in a head coach and remove Tom Thibodeau in the summer was polarizing among Knicks Nation. There were even folks in the media who I've discussed it with that didn't think this was the right move. Maybe some people thought it wasn't fair. Thibodeau didn't deserve it. But I always like to say deserve sometimes because it has nothing to do with it. I think what you've been seeing a little bit of in this regular season thus far, the 2025 portion of it, is that Mike Brown is malleable. And this is something we've seen. That's a real big word with him. Malleable, adaptable, whatever you want to say. He's not rigid and sticking to one thing. He's willing to try out different rotations. He's willing to see things that work. He's willing to go with different roster combinations, even ones that I thought weren't going to work. I didn't think the Knicks would get good minutes out of seeing Brunson, Tyler Kolek, and Jordan Clarkson on the floor. But we've seen that work where three ball handlers have helped them. Now, is it going to work against every team? Probably not. Can it work against some teams? Yes. But the fact that he's willing to experiment and try, the fact that he's willing to go with hot hands, the fact that it appears like he's looking at what is going on in practice and who can produce for him, like we saw with Kevin McCullough Jr. getting minutes against Atlanta the other night, even when Josh Hart is down. Yes, injuries have helped with some of that because we saw Mike Brown experiment a lot in the beginning of the season. Then he shortened his rotation. Now he's expanded it back open a little bit. But as CP was saying, and I agree with him so much on this, is that these are things that can help these players grow. It also helps the organization learn what they have and they do not have in these players. I think the Knicks over the last 5 to 6 years probably have not gotten enough credit, in my opinion, for the development of young talent, right? We've seen that with a Deuce McBride and what he's turned into. We've seen it now, or at least feels like we're starting to. We do need to see more, but it feels like we're starting to see it with Tyler Kolek. We've seen this with Mitchell Robinson, even players that are no longer here, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. They did develop and got themselves to have some trade value, which were able to help the Knicks. But the thing we didn't really ever see was sometimes how extended could that rotation be? Now, I've long been a proponent, especially in this era, this second apron era of the NBA. Depth is so valuable, right? And sometimes it's not just about going out and acquiring depth because that's really hard. Because as CP noted when we talked about it, wing depth will be nice, but teams value two-way wings. That is so valuable in this league. Teams value having a good backup point guard, a good backup big, all that stuff, right? You need on your team. And sometimes you can find that depth internally if you develop. And I think that's very underrated. Knicks might be finding that out right now with Tyler Kolek. They might be finding that out with Mohamed Diawara and some other players. And if they can get these guys to be comfortable, to know their roles, to understand if they're placed in certain situations, if somebody goes down, that they have the ability to stay ready and then produce, that can be huge for the Knicks going into 2026. I think the biggest revelation of 2025 has been the malleability and adaptability of Mike Brown and his willingness to empower players to be better, particularly the young players on this roster. And then you also have to credit the veterans too for helping these young players. But if the Knicks are able to play a little bit deeper and they're able to get things out of the young players, then you can see them make the kind of deep run that many fans envision. You have to look no further than the NBA champions of last year, the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? They're a team, and you'll talk to me about how they've drafted well and, they empower their players, but they do that. They were able to play 10, 11 deep. The Pacers, the other finalists from last year, they were playing 10, 11 deep in the playoffs. You don't want your players to be worn out, and how you don't get your players to be worn out is empowering the younger players at the end of the bench, putting them in situations like Mike Brown is doing. So listen, I know it's early. I know we've only seen the 2025 portion of this Knickerbocker team. And there's a long way to go between now and the playoffs. And the playoffs is absolutely when Mike Brown and this Knicks roster will be judged. But in the meantime, in the regular season, you got to find some things out. And right now, Mike Brown is finding those things out. We're starting to see possibly some of the fruits of the labor of guys like a Tyler Kolek and others down the road. Now, I don't know if everybody's going to hit. I don't know if it's all going to work. But I like the fact that Mike Brown is trying and you're seeing it and you're getting to see what development can look like. And I think if you're a Knicks fan going into 2026, you can at least be a little bit excited about that. But hey, 2025. It's been a good one for the Knicks. You got to see them go to the Eastern Conference Finals. They were 2 wins short of the finals, and now they've started off this year really strong, and they're sitting at second in the East, and it looks like they're rising, and they have some big games coming up to start off 2026. It should be fun. We've had fun covering the Knicks here on New York Got Game here in 2025. We expect 2026 to be a great one. Got to thank all the people behind the scenes, producer Erica Block, editor Eduardo Guerrero, production assistants Jessica Thiesing and Tommy Cohen, all the fantastic people that worked on New York Got Game this year, even my former technical directors, Heather Bonsignore and Nick Federico. Appreciate all of them. Want to wish everybody out there, all the Knicks fans, a happy and healthy 2026. I'm Dexter Henry. The next time I see you on New York Got Game will be in the new year. Everybody stay well. As I said, stay healthy. Enjoy the new year. Be safe. And we'll see you next time on New York Got Game in 2026. Peace.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.